Thank you for attending the seminar today, where we're going to be talking about some ideas for improving your business profitability. This is aimed at small builders building home extensions, houses and so on. Okay. So, as I'm sure you're all too painfully aware, it's very easy to be very busy and to think that you're making money because you are busy. And when you look in the bank, you see there's some cash in there, so you think, great, we must be making money, there's cash in there. But it's also very easy to deceive yourself, because often that cash is actually owed to your suppliers in due course. And you've been busy making profits for other people rather than yourself. So today we're going to have a look at ways that you can improve your profits, and I've divided it today into these 5 basic sections. Improving your estimating is obviously the key to this, but also how can you move up your profit margins? What holds you back from adding some more profit to them? Many people think that it's a very competitive market and therefore they have to be very cheap. That's not necessarily the case, as we're going to propose today. How can you run your business more efficiently so that you're making best use of your resources? It's very easy, again, to be very busy without being particularly effective. How can you improve your buying costs? And finally, briefly, how can you improve your accounting processes so that you get a good feedback loop and understand whether what you've predicted is actually occurring, and then make adjustments for the subsequent jobs. So first topic, improving your estimating. Right, so costs are obviously divided into what I would call 3 elements. You've got your overheads, which are company-wide costs. You've got your variable direct costs, which relate specifically to the job, and of course on top of all that you actually need to make some profit, both for distribution to you as the shareholders, or to reinvest in the business so that you can make the business grow. If you're not making profits, the chances are you're going to be standing still most of the time. So what are overheads? Obvious question, but sometimes smaller builders haven't always got a grip on that, understanding the difference between the direct site costs and the overheads. Now, overhead costs are going to obviously be things like office costs, management, which may be yourself or a proportion of your time if you're a smaller builder, the direct costs of running vans along with their depreciation, any insurances, bookkeeping, accountants, maybe you've got some secretarial work for printing out and typing out quotes and so on, answering phones, sales and marketing, if you're advertising in local papers and so on. All this has to be covered somehow, technology, phones and computers and so on. And you may well find there are other costs. A good starting point is to look back into your previous year's accounts and to identify all the costs that would basically occur all of the time, whether you laid a single brick or not. Now, in my experience, these costs often vary between 10 and 15%. In my own business, I struggle to ever get them down below 12, but smaller builders may be able to run a little bit leaner. So, as I say, these overheads exist pretty well all of the time. No matter how much work you do, you have to generate these costs. Apologies for the dog in the background. I'm actually preparing this conversation from home today. So here's some examples of a typical business. You can see I've just put some random numbers in there, really sort of giving us a flavour for what would happen. Office costs, management costs, direct costs, insurances and so on as before. And I've put some figures against there. And in this example, we've got a turnover of 500,000 and overheads of around 15%. So that's 75,000 divided by 500,000 gives you 15%. Now, for argument's sake, we could say that as as a percentage of the turnover, we would either want to make 5, 10 or 15% on our 500,000 turnover. So in the various columns here, you can see the different profits that are required. So 5% of 500,000 is clearly 25,000, 10% is 50,000, and 15% is 75,000. So the total markup or margin on those on the 500,000 job is 100, 125 and 150,000. So there's some interesting things that actually occur here. I've targeted myself at a £500,000 turnover, and if I increase my margin, I've actually only got to construct £350,000 worth of work instead of £400,000, and I'm making more money. So it's a fairly obvious thing that if you put your margin up, you're going to be increasing your overall profit, but in a curious way, it actually pushes down the demand for turnover. So the other thing that you can see from these figures is that if you're only marking up 5% or wanting 5% profit, you've got a 20% overall profit there, and you're making 25,000. But if you've marked it up to 30%, you're making 75,000, or 3 times the profit, just for sneaking up your profit margin by 10%, i.e. from 5% to 15%. So this is quite a sort of fundamental thing to get your head around. You don't have to double your your turnover to double or treble your profits. You've just got to control obviously your building costs and sneak up your margin a small amount to dramatically transform the way your business runs and how it feels to run it. Bear in mind that, for argument's sake, the 75,000 profit there is probably, for a smaller business, is in addition to the management costs that you're probably drawing out of your business yourself. So it's very important to maintain a sensible margin. I often come across builders who say, well, I'm only marking up 15% or 20%. In those circumstances, they're probably only just about covering their overhead. And if there are any discrepancies in their estimating or price movements, the chances are that they're going to be breaking even, or worse still, losing money. Now, how do we apply these profits? Well, it's very important not to think, well, okay, I want to make a 25% profit, therefore I'm going to work out my overall total of overheads and profits. I only want 25% of that, so I'm going to add 25% to my build costs. That's not how it works. You need to express your overheads and your profits as a percentage of the building costs, and then add that to your direct costs. So again, if we look at this middle column here, and look at this row here, the total overhead as percentage of the building costs, i.e. not your turnover, the overhead is, sorry, I'm getting lost here in my own figures. The overhead is 20% of the actual cost of the building work. Similarly, you need to mark up, or the profit margin is 13.33% of the building costs. So you're expressing it in terms of the building costs rather than the turnover of the business. So overall, in order to make a 10% profit margin, you need to add 33% to your building costs. Okay, so that's really important. So a 10% margin is not a big margin, so you need to add that order of margin. And many of you are going to be screaming to me, "Oh, that's no good. Nobody will ever buy my work. The business won't succeed." You need to ask yourself, do you want to be just working to cover overhead, or do you want to be making some profit? So I would say, as an absolute minimum, you need to mark up your costs, which have been carefully calculated, by at least 30%, and ideally 33 or 42%. Okay, I hope that makes sense. It's quite a complicated concept to get your head around in some ways. Many people just add, as I say, 10% to their actual estimated building costs and think, well, I'm making 10% profit. No, you're not. You've ignored your overhead costs, and you've not actually got a 10% profit. Okay, so let's have a look at a typical job. So in this example job here, I've got a £100,000 job made up of 40, 30 and 10 and 20,000 respectively for the different cost centres. So I want to make a 10% margin. So as we saw from the previous column, I've got to mark up that 20% and 33%, sorry, 13.33% respectively. So 20% of 100,000 gives me 20,000. 13.3% of 100,000 gives me 13.3 thousand. So I've got a total margin there of 33.33 thousand. And that's the quote I actually need to give my client. If I then express that again as a percentage of the total value of the job, just need to get my head around these numbers again. You've got 15% as the percentage of the quote, and your profit is 10% of the quote. So 13.33 thousand expressed as a percentage of the overall job value is 10%. I hope that makes sense. So you've got a total margin on the job of 25%. 33,000 expressed as a total of the job is 25%. So on this job where I've marked up 33%, I'm actually only going to make a 10% profit margin. Okay, so getting a decent margin for the job is actually crucial for the success of your business. Okay, so that's a fairly complicated argument, and the next thing to consider is how do I then calculate the cost of the labour, plant and material, subcontract costs, sundry and site management. Well, that's a big task, as we all know. There are lots of things to unravel in that, and trying to carry this out manually, in my view, is virtually impossible for a small builder. You do need software to help you. Whether it's our software or somebody else's, you've got to have help with that. So you need to prepare an accurate estimate so that you know exactly what's in that job. So when you apply your markup, you're actually going to make some money. If you underestimate that by 5 or 10%, by leaving things out, lead flashings, lintels, mastic and so on, you're going to be chiseling away any profit margin you're going to create. So accuracy is absolutely key. You know, having a meter squared price is okay for an initial discussion with the client, but it's very dangerous to run your business on it because there are so many variables. You know, are they using a clay tile? What type of doors have they got? Are they expensive bifolds or you know, a relatively cheap patio door? What's the quality of all the materials? All of this has to be factored in properly. So as I say, if you don't do this accurately, your profits will evaporate. If push comes to shove when you're with your client, it's absolutely critical that you know what margin of error and profit you have built into it. And I would say that if you can't make the sort of margin that you're targeting, you should walk away from it. Now, this is obviously very difficult to do if you've been estimating manually, because we're often told by our builders that, you know, that a small job will take them a week to do. I don't suppose it's taken them a week completely, but it's interrupted by other things like running the business, but they spend an inordinate amount of time developing it. So if you can get a piece of software that can do your estimating in a quarter of the time, this is going to make you far more robust in your response to challenges from your clients. So automate your systems. It will change your whole outlook on estimates, on your customer's response to your estimate. Another big challenge for us all is keeping track of the building material prices. As we've all seen in the last few months, prices are on the move. It's very difficult to keep track of them, so you actually need to build in a margin there to take into account the effects of inflation. And again, that's very difficult to do manually. It may be that you're not starting a job for 6 months and it's going to take you 6 months to do it. So by the time you get to the end of that job, your prices are going to be 12 months old. So if inflation's moving at 5 or 10%, all of your profit at that end of the job will evaporate. So you need tools to be able to cover that phenomenon. Again, how do you do that manually? It's virtually impossible. You need to think about software. You need to think about wastage, breakage, and theft. Everything is subject to this. In our software, we even allow a wastage factor on things like toilets and windows. You may say, well, how can you waste a bit of a window? Well, of course you can't, but over time you will find that some of them will get damaged or they'll need repairs doing to them. So you need to have that built into it. And again, you have to have a methodology for doing that. So, as I've implied as I've been going along, there's a lot to think about. It's virtually impossible to do this manually. There are just not enough hours in the day to factor all this in. And so you need software. And we're going to have a look at some software that will help you wrestle with those problems. So, you've now probably frightened yourself to death by thinking, yes, well, I've got to do all this estimate. I've got to build in inflation and what have you. And get a decent margin. How on earth am I going to convince my clients to do this? Well, it can be done. In a previous life, I ran my own building company. I built 300 extensions and about 80 houses, and I wasn't the cheapest in the street by a long way. I built in good profits and estimated my work accurately. It is really a matter of relationship and presentation. So, the core to this really is gaining the trust from your customer. You need to actually get sort of up close and personal with him and actually make him believe that you are going to be the one who's going to deliver him a good job at a reasonable price. So the steps here are very straightforward. There's no rocket science in it, but it seems to me that it's one that's often missed by builders. They will often sort of fly into the client's house late at night in their muddy boots, not take enough time to make friends with the client, or worse still, they get drawings from the architect, they spend hours preparing a quote and they email it or post it to the client, and then they're surprised to find that they haven't won the work. Well, the client doesn't know anything about them. He's got no way of judging their character or the quality of their work. So it is really important to visit the site, spend time on site with the client, walking around the site, taking a few measurements, looking down the drains, generally showing them that you're actually interested in their work. And have a look at the specification and the scope. Maybe you can even suggest one or two alterations or savings, and generally that will really help you to build a strong relationship with the client. You then need to prepare a detailed and itemized quote for the customer that is transparent to them, so they can really see what they're getting. If you give them a one-page letter and say, I'm going to build you an extension for 50 grand, I'm not really going to tell you what's in it, how are they going to trust you? Or how do they, on what basis can they possibly compare your one-page letter with somebody else's? They can't. They can only really do it on price. So take some time to provide a good quote. It's also a good idea to wrap around that quote a legally binding contract, so that again they know that they're secure, they've got a proper contract that binds them, and equally as importantly, it binds them to you and protects you. If you ever have to go to court and you haven't got a proper contract that's got all the bells and whistles that are required these days, you're going to find very quickly that you're on a hiding to nothing. You have to have a detailed quote. Some of our clients tell us that they also use the health and safety documentation that our software provides as part of their bid. This is obviously particularly important when you're doing work for local authorities and so on, but it can be quite successful with domestic clients, because they will get a nice 10, 15, 20-page quote describing all the work, a legally binding contract, and then a full description of how you're going to keep the site safe, clean and tidy, and so on. And all of that is all about building trust. And once you've got all of those pieces in place, that's going to help in the confidence game. The next thing that you can also consider doing, which again will raise the game, and I'll be showing you some models in a minute, is to provide a 3D model of what it is you're proposing to build, maybe some 3D plans. Again, this really helps you to go, to be in another space in their mind. On the one hand, they've got a couple of quotes with a single letter. On your hand, you've got this fantastic document describing everything. You've got this nice guy who spent some time. He didn't walk mud all over the carpets, and he's only a few £1,000s cheaper. These people, you're probably extending their house that's worth many hundreds of thousands of pounds, possibly even millions. They're not going to scrape around and knock 5,000 or 10,000 off and risk their house in the hands of someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Some of our clients also provide design and build services, particularly for simpler jobs when as they're building up their capabilities. And this is a fantastic way of improving your relationship with the client, and by default improving the profit margin. It also tends to knock the competition completely off the agenda. Because if you've gone in there, you've suggested a good design, you've provided them with a 3D model and all them documents we've described, the chances are they're going to be saying, these guys are great, let's stick with them. And that in fact was the basis of my own business. It worked very well. Another thing that is perhaps worth just throwing on the table is that often when I'm at touring the country meeting builders, they say, well, I win most of my work, and obviously that's a badge of honour, but I'm so busy, I haven't got time to prepare quotes, and I don't seem to be making that much money. Well, the answer's quite simple, really. Put up your profit margin and do less work. You don't have to run around like a headless chicken doing work for people that is cheaply. If you're winning all of your work, the chances are, the subtext of that is that you are too cheap. And that's why everybody's giving you their work. So, carry on doing the good work, but improve your presentation relationships with the client at the important stage. And if you think about it, what percentage of your time do you spend actually managing and producing this project for them versus the time of preparing a quote? It's relatively small. If you can use some software to deliver that quote in 2 or 3 hours, you're going to then spend the next 6 months building this project. So it behoves you to spend a little bit more time at the time when you actually secure the job. That's when you make your money, at that early stage. Okay, so the next puzzle is you've won this work, and trust me, that if you adopt this technique, you will be able to fill your order books at good margins. But you could have a lot of work, and you've got to manage them carefully. It's fine when you've only got 1 or 2 jobs. You can do that in your head with your experience. But once you start to build up the level of work that you've got going through, you are going to need some tools to help you. And within our Estimating Express software, you've got a basic Gantt Chart tool, and that's a really helpful way of helping to plan out the jobs. Use that to communicate to your clients when the job's going to be done, to communicate to your contractors when you need them on site. You need to be able to book them well on site, and that takes planning. Again, you can probably do that when you've got 1 job. When you've got 5 or 10 jobs running, it then starts to become very complicated, and you can rapidly lose your way. Another thing that I found when I was running my business is that it's really important to meet your target turnovers. When I was house building and our ability to develop was constrained by the market, there weren't enough customers to buy the houses, I found that I was, instead of building 15 houses a year, I was only building 13. That doesn't sound much difference, but it does actually make a huge difference, because you're not generating the money to cover your overhead. And if you think about our little example here, if you've got your overhead at 75,000 per annum, that means every week you have got to earn £1,500 to cover the cost of that overhead. You've got to keep turning that handle very quickly and in a strategic way. You can't allow projects to slip by a week or 2, because you simply won't make the money. Improving your buying costs. Now, again, there's no rocket science here. It's a question of being able to go out and get your prices when you actually come to build the job. Our software will allow you to do that easily. At a press of a button, you can produce quotes by product type, by build phase, by supplier, however you like, and you can then email those to your merchants to ask for prices. The other thing that I haven't mentioned with the software is that it is linked to live prices. So as you're estimating, you can actually estimate automatically with live pricing from merchants at current prices. So that's a really useful tool. Finally, and we won't have much time to discuss this in any detail, it's obviously a really useful thing to be able to do, to be able to monitor how much it's actually costing you to build each element of the job as they're going along. Many builders will say, well, I look at my accounts at the end of the year. That's no good. By the time you've got there, you're probably looking back over jobs that were done, or in fact, by the time the accountants produce your accounts for you, you're probably looking at jobs you completed 12 or 15 months ago. And the whole detail of that is probably of no interest to you whatsoever. In fact, your management, your accounts for submitting to the taxman probably won't even tell you the level of detail that you want. What you really need is a set of tools that allow you to monitor the actual bill costs and then compare that with what you've estimated, so that you can adjust where you believe you have problems. If your productivity of your tradesman is different to what you're estimating, you need to know that now, not in 15 months' time, even if those accounts reveal that data. We work with a company who produce a set of accounting systems called CIA, Construction Industry Accounts. It's specially designed for the construction industry. It helps you analyze each job phase by phase. So as soon as you've put in your costs for your foundations, for argument's sake, you can get the system to automatically compare the two for you. So within weeks of any task being done, you're getting feedback. The system also allows you to manage your tax affairs, VAT, CIS documentation, and so on. So a fantastic set of tools for a small builder. So how can we help you? We're about halfway into it now, so in a couple of minutes I'm going to start actually demonstrating the software, but let's give you a bit of an overview of what we can provide for you. The project toolkit is all of our tools other than the accounting software, and you can see on the screen we've got the Plans Express software that allows you to generate your drawings or trace over existing drawings quickly. You can export your information straight to Estimator Express. That automatically generates your estimate, produces your quotes. You've got a basic Gantt chart system in to help you manage jobs while you're relatively small. As you get bigger, you can then export those Gantt charts to Project Expert to help you run multiple jobs and to do something that's called resource leveling, which enables you to plan your job so that you don't overload particular trades, or enables you to predict when you need additional help, some weeks into the future, rather than discovering, oops, we've actually overrun the project and we haven't generated enough overhead. From Estimator Express, you can also fire the information into Health and Safety Expert, which generates all your company-wide documentation and risk assessments, cost assessments, and so on. And Contracts Expert is also automatically generated when you export to Estimator Express. So all of those tools go together to make the management process of the jobs really effective. They can save you an enormous amount of time. You're not double entering all the information. It is fantastic. If you go onto our website shortly, we'll be having some recordings of some of the builders who use the software, and it literally transforms their business. One of our builders was saying 3 years ago there was him and 4 others. He now employs 40 people plus contractors, and it's all down to using the software. Okay, so very briefly about each product. Plans Express, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute, allows you to trace over the drawings that are provided by the architect, or to create brand new drawings from scratch, so you can offer your design and build service. It automatically produces 3D visuals, and that is a real job winner. Saves you time and money on drawings if you're doing your own in-house drawing system, and of course you can amend existing drawings if you want to provide your guys with radiator positions and so on. Very briefly, here's an example of a job that we did in the 90s. It's a pencil drawing underneath, and we actually, as a bit of a project, traced over it to see how it would run through the system. And this probably took me, I don't know, an hour or so. It was quite a complicated job to do, maybe a little bit longer with the parapets and so on. Once I'd traced over the 2 plans, I could then automatically generate the elevations, and I hope to be able to show you that shortly, and dimension the drawing again in another hour or two. So in the morning, say, you could have a complete set of drawings all fully estimated. But in addition to that, which is really amazing, you get this fantastic 3D image that you can present to your client. You can say, this is what your house is going to look like, or this is what your extension is going to look like. This is what your floor plan looks like. You know, I think you'd agree it communicates so much more than a basic 2D plan. It really shows the client that you're actually in another league in terms of the way you handle information and work with your client. Then, as another little exercise, I googled the existing development that we'd done there. Those are the other two houses either side that we developed, and placed the house on the site so you could get an idea of how it would look and how it fits into the landscape. Okay, so Estimator Express is the next part of the jigsaw puzzle. You can use this from scratch, or you can inherit the information that's off the CAD drawing, and it automatically builds the estimate for you. As we've said, it features live pricing from major merchants. What that means is that you say to us, I've got an account with Jewson's and Travis, can you provide me with all the product pricing from them? And that information comes down into your software, including your discounts. So within a matter of minutes, you've got an accurate set of prices to start estimating. You can also tweak the labor rates and plant rates to reflect the prices that you're paying. So, you know, within an hour or two, once you get the software, you have got a system that reflects your price structure, not somebody else's, and that's really important. The software will build in inflation, as we were saying. That can steal your profits. It automatically calculates the profits you need and builds in your margin for overhead, as we've discussed. It provides your customer with a detailed quote in virtually instantly. You know, you'll get a 10, 15, 20, 30-page quote, depending on the job, by simply pressing a couple of buttons. And that's a real job winner. When the client sees your 3D images and that quote, you've really blown the competition out of the water. The competition's got to work very hard to keep up with you. It also gives you the facility to develop your Gantt chart, and you can manage your, I'm saying smaller projects, but you can use it to manage a house without any difficulty at all. You can also merge multiple projects with Estimator Express. Obviously, you've then got so much data, you can negotiate better rates with your merchants and your labor as well. Of course, you can negotiate the rates that you want to build into your estimates each time. So, very briefly here, I'm going to show you some more of this in a minute in an actual job. Sort of management information it produces, phase by phase costs. Here we've got we've drilled down into the information here, and you can see that all the information associated with the brickwork shell is described along with its cost. Other reports show quantities, wastage, and so on. There are literally, it comes shipped with about 40 standard reports, but you can create thousands of other reports with the system. As we were saying, it's got a basic Gantt chart built into it. You can learn how to use this tool in 5 minutes. It's an absolute doddle to use. It's not a Microsoft project, but we're not building a spaceship, so you don't need a very complicated piece of software, particularly when you're getting started with this sort of thing. Quotation, as we say, in this case, we've got a 31-page quote that's been produced probably in a minute, describing every element of the job that's been drawn on the drawing. Health and safety expert, as we were saying earlier, just inherits the information from the Estimator Express to develop all your documentation, contracts, develops an FMB quality crystal marked document, so that both you and your client actually understand what they're contracting themselves for. Again, very quick to produce. So in terms of health and safety expert, those are the documents that it will produce. Health and safety policies, risk assessments, COSH, method statement, pre-construction info pack, and the construction construction phase health and safety plan. These documents are produced literally in minutes. A bit more detail of the sort of information that in effect cascades out of the back of you having drawn your house. There's virtually no input required to generate this information. So, as we've said, at the tender stage, you can impress your client, and for a few pence a day, you've got all the protection that you need to avoid hefty fines. We're hearing more and more from our customers that the HSE are on the move, and they're making these intervention charges very regularly. So save yourself some money there. That'll go straight to your bottom line. Contracts Expert, again, you can simply import the job and it will produce the contracts, as we've said. Okay, I'm not going to dwell too much on these because we're running out of time, and I want to show you how the software actually works. Project Expert, again, we haven't got time to look at this in any detail, but this allows you to manage your jobs in a much tighter way than the basic onboard project management tool. So there you can see it's a rather more sophisticated Gantt chart screen showing you start dates and so on, and bringing in cost information as well. And at the bottom here you can see what the resources that are required for each element of the job. So a whole load of management information to help you make sure that things run smoothly and you don't get bottlenecks building in your projects. And all of that is what we call the Premium Project Toolkit. Okay, so I've probably slightly overrun on the description of it. There is so much to talk about in the software and what you're trying to undertake. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very quickly show you how to do a few elements in Plans Express. I'm going to export it into Estimator Express, and then we can see the quotations information that flows off the back. So if I just zoom out in this, I'm using my scroll wheel on my mouse. What we've got here is a very traditional sort of extension that you might build. It's a lean-to extension across the back with a projection. So if I look at that on the drawing, you can see that. So I just dropped a couple of construction lines on there to help me place the walls. That's simply done by going into the drawing and annotation toolbar, clicking on the item that you want to snap to, and placing the wall on there. So no sleight of hand there. It's very easy to do. Okay, so if I go back to the architectural toolbar, you can see all of the elements that the software will deal with: external and internal walls, doors and windows, structural openings, flooring, roofs, attics, drains, landscaping. On all of these buttons here, they all contain numerous elements within them. I'm going to show you a few of them now. So let's say I want to do a brick and block cavity wall. It's a single story job. So I'm going to pick that one. And then it then throws up a series of dialogues that allows me to change the height of the walls and so on. I've picked a 2x550 wall, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm happy with the thickness of the leaves. I can vary the width and the depth of the foundations and thickness of the concrete. I can change the width of my cavity. I know this cavity is 150 mil in this case. And certainly if I put these labels on, when I click in any cell, it gives me information about the particular cell. 9 times out of 10 it's very straightforward. Occasionally you'll want a little bit of advice. And then finally I say to the software, yes, I am going to plaster the walls and decorate it, and I want one skirting board in it. All of these things can be changed to reflect the precise job. Click Finish. I can then click onto the drawing and place this wall on the drawing. So I simply trace around it. There's the wall on there. Do the same for the internal block wall. Again, I can vary the height of the wall, I can change the foundations, the footings, and I can select whether I want to plaster and skirt it. I then place that on the drawing. And repeat the process for the other wall. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the 3D. So straight away you can see that you've got an accurate representation of the walls. Okay, let's pop a roof onto this now. I'm going to do a cut roof. I can set the angle to precisely what I'm working on. I can vary the width of the soffits. I can even set the strapping details and the spacing of noggings and so on. So all of this information has been collected to be used in the estimating. I can vary the rafter and joist centers. I can vary the spacing of my gutter brackets. It's even going to work those out for me. I can set the spacing of my tiling, and I can confirm whether I want to paint and decorate the fascia boards. In this case, I'm saying no because I know I've got plastic fascias. Okay. These are the roof types that the software will automatically estimate. It'll do apex roofs, hipped roofs, barn roofs, and lean-to roofs, and it allows you to effectively Lego block those roof types together to give you probably 95% of the roof shapes that you're going to tend to meet in your everyday life. And if you're doing design and build, it will obviously do 100% of the ones that you design. Okay, so I want to do a lean-to roof, and the software is actually telling me in the bottom left-hand corner here what to do. It's what we call a command window. It's a help window, really. So it's saying indicate the wall that I want to sit this roof onto. Well, I want to sit it on this wall here. Indicate the outer corner of the roof, and then the length of the roof. It then asks me whether I want to place the ceilings and purlins. I'm going to say no at this stage. Click on there to repeat the exercise. I'm going to do an apex valley roof this time. Again, it tells me to select the wall, measure the gable, and then it tells me in the command line to press T on my keyboard and select the roof that I want to tee into. It then says, do I want to do the valley roof and binders and so on? Well, we're very short of time today, so I'm going to say no if that's okay. And we can then see what we've got so far. So if I go back into my 3D, you can then see we've got a 3D model. So the software is capturing all of the areas and volumes and so on for use in the estimate. So quickly, to give you an idea of what it can do, I'll drop the bifold doors into here. Aluminium doors, 3,300, I know they are. I'm going to accept the defaults to save time. And as a quick exercise, I'm going to place one on that gable as well. And drop a couple of windows into it so you can see how they work. Select my windows, confirm the sizes, the fixing details. It's going to work out all the screws and so on for me. Reveal depths, it'll plaster the reveals for me. Window boards or not, it'll work those out. And finally, how am I going to paint the windows? Well, it's painted throughout because it's a softwood window and mastic seal around the perimeter. I can then place those windows on the drawing. And that's it. Okay, so at this stage you can see the software has captured all that information. As a quick exercise, I'm going to save that first of all. File, save as. I'm going to put it in a particular folder, Smart Builder Presentations. And I'm going to show you this drawing slightly further on so that you can get a sense of the overall project. It's just saving that at the moment. The web software tends to slow the activity down a little bit, so it normally runs slightly faster. So I'm now going to have a look at a job that I've done earlier. So you can see it's the same project on screen, but as an exercise I drew the existing house, and you can see we've got structural openings and so on in there. Incidentally, we've marked the existing house as existing so that the software doesn't estimate that as well. Now the other thing there, you can see I've generated an elevation. I'll just show you how you do that again. So I go to the Views and 3D screen, select an elevation that I want to prepare, tell the software where I want to stand and how far I'm going into the building. I just realized I've done that slightly incorrectly. Where do I want to stand? I want to take it right the way past the ridge line because I want to do a full elevation, not just an elevation of the extension. Then I ask the software to place it on the drawing. I'll just pop it over here for the time being. And the software generates the elevations for me. So you can see there's very little work to be done to lay out your plans or trace over them and develop elevations. Okay, so let's go into Estimator Express now, and we'll have a look at how that functions. If I quickly show you into my settings and just run quickly through the core features without drilling too deeply into them. The price book allows you to set up the software to reflect your pricing for your labor and plant and to download your favorite materials from your merchants, including your discounts. You can also add your own bespoke products in there. You don't have to only use ours. The specification tool allows you to configure the system to use the materials that you want to use in each project based on the prices drawn from the price book. It also allows you to allocate the labor resources that you use for each element of the job. All of those are configurable to reflect the way that you work. You might want to use a 2-in-1 gang for extensions and 4-in-2 for new build. The software allows you to do that. And in fact, it comes configured in that way. In an extension, it has a mini digger. In a house, it's using a JCB. And again, all of those things can be changed. The My Favorites allows you to choose which merchant you use by default for different product types. So you might want to buy your timber from Jewson's and your heavy side from Travis. You can ask it to do that. My Profit and Inflation allows you to set up your markup that you are allowing to cover the cost of your profit and your overhead, and obviously build in inflation. So all that's automatic. As soon as you've configured that, let's go into that. It's a key part of today's discussion. You can see that you can set up your markup for each of those elements. The workbooks, those are all the detailed calculators that pull in the information from the Plans Express, and I'm not going to go into that in any detail. So okay, we're short of time now. Let's actually import a job, and you can see how that works. Okay, so the software is just loading it. And I'm in the job summary here, so you can see there's loads of jobs that I've estimated over the last few weeks. So I give the job a name. Need to type properly. Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Not concentrating. Trying to talk and type at the same time. And it's an extension. And I'm going to import the job that we've actually drawn today rather than the one that we were looking at. just now. So you can see the construction lines, and there's a little image there of the job that we've drawn. I'm going to use the master price book that features my own prices and my prices from Jewson's and so on. There's no discounts in my prices, incidentally. I'm then going to choose a standard specification that's set up to comply with standard building regs, as far as we can tell. I'm then going to choose the Gantt chart that I want to use. I'm doing a small extension. I'm starting the job in January 2015 on the 12th. Okay. Customer's name again. Put the customer's address in. Choose the profit margin that I want to use. Maybe we want to mark it up a bit more on this job. Set the rate of inflation. Press finish, and the software will then estimate the job. So just to recap on what we've done, we've spent, I don't know, five minutes preparing that sketch drawing of some external walls, roofs, some doors and windows. I haven't done the floors and existing structural openings because we just don't have enough time in this demonstration. But I think you can see that in another 10-15 minutes I could have laid out the floors, put the structural openings in, and dropped some drainage in there, and then imported that into the software. So the software then sends all the geometry into the estimating tool. It then asks it to looks up the prices from the price book and the specification that you've chosen, adds your profit and inflation, and merges that with the Gantt chart to allow you to plan the job. And all of that is, we've effectively done that in just over a quarter of an hour. So I hope you can see that you can really turbocharge your business. In terms of going back to the core discussion this morning, how can I increase my margins? A block to builders often in tendering for work is that it physically takes too long to do it. If you can streamline that process, you can do more estimates very quickly. You can move your margin up, you can present a really good quote, and you can win more work. Maybe you've got two choices really. You can try and keep the volume of work at the same level, or you can increase it and reduce it, or you can increase both and increase your overall turnover. It gives you a lot of choice in how you run your business. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what the software's done. You can see it's brought in the 5 different component types that we've done: the walls, the block walls, the bifold doors, the roofs, and the windows. So let's have a look at the brick and block cavity wall. That'll help us to understand how the software functions. So here you can see it's brought in the 5 walls. It's captured all the dimensions, lengths and heights of walls and so on, the foundation details that we selected in the dialogues as we went through. It then carries out some intermediate calculations to work out areas and volumes and so on, and it then assigns each of those elements to the specification. So for argument's sake, if we were to look at the bricks above DPC, you can see that it's calculated 33.62 square meters of brickwork, and it's assigned that to a 50p brick. If we look further down it, you can see all the labour has been assigned to the different elements. So again, if we look at the bricks above DPC, you can see we've got the same area of bricks assigned to a 2 and 1 gang. Plant is at the bottom here with diggers and skips and so on. So let's have a look at that information in terms of a cost detail by looking at the resources output. And again, we'll look at those bricks. Just going to put a little marker on here which will help you to understand the data more, a little yellow line. So you can see we've got the 50p bricks there. There are 50 At 50p, there are 60 to the square metre. That's £30 a square metre. It's added a wastage factor, which we talked about in terms of protecting your profits. So then it says, okay, we've got 33.62 square metres of bricks. There's the cost of them, there's the wastage cost, and there's the total number of bricks that we need plus wastage. So we need, including the wastage, we need 2,168 bricks. In terms of the quantity, we need 2,017. If we look at the labour, you can see we've got our gang rate set at £70. You can set that at whatever rate you like, depending on which part of the country you are. I think this was in central London. The brickies are on £70 for a gang. It takes them 0.6 of an hour, or £42 a square metre, which is about £700 a thousand, I think, at current rates. And you can see there's the same area of bricks and the total number of hours just to lay the bricks. And each element in the job has been calculated for each part of it. Plant is calculated at the bottom. So that exercise has been done for every element in the job, whether it's a wall, a roof, a slab. It automatically calculates it to that level of accuracy. Okay, so let's have a look at the report side of it. In the report manager, we've got numerous graphs, and they're all sat in the ones there with a little icon there. For argument's sake, if we wanted to have a look at the cost cash flow, that's how the money will flow through the business based on the underlying costs and the Gantt chart that we've prepared. Moving further down, if we have a look at a basic cost report, we can see the total cost of the 5 elements that we designed there is 28,000 quid. And we can drill down into that by moving these icons around on screen. So that's given us a breakdown in terms of labour, plant and material. That's interesting, you may say. £9,000 worth of labour. What is that? Well, if I break it down, that's by types of labour. If I drill down again to description, you can see how it's spread out again. And if I drag this item down, you can see precisely what each of those trades are doing to make up that money. So everything there is worked out to the last screw, to the last hour of labour. Okay, moving quickly on, as we're very short of time, I'll show you how you create a quote. I'm going to create a quote by build phase, which is the most popular way of doing it. You can do it by element, so you can describe it by foundations, footings, walls and so on, or you can describe it by wall, bifold door, roof and so on. Instantly, while we're in this menu, there's also a thing here called the Notes Wizard, and that actually generates a set of building regs quality notes that you can print out or embed in your CAD drawing. That picks up all the information from the estimating tool, the specification. Okay, so the system then says, okay, how do you want to present this to the client? Do you want to give them an abbreviated quote, or do you want to give them a full one with all the labour in, or all the labour, plant and material? Do you want to show quantities? Do you want to have phase totals? Do you want to have a little picture in the corner? And you just select the ones that you want. You can tell the software to build in your own logos and so on. Set the rate of VAT, and the software will build the quote for you. So the quotation is fully customizable, as I say, in terms of logos, fonts, what exactly the quote says, terms and conditions. All of those can be embedded into the software and presented to your client. So here's 2 pages of the quote. You can see there's a header page with the customer's name and address on it. I just enlarge that for you. There's an opening letter to the client. Again, you can obviously customize that and save it in the system so it is printed each time. And then each phase of the job is described. So in this case, we've got the foundations, description of the concrete below ground, details of the footings, brickwork shell. If we just pause on this, since we were looking at that a minute ago, you can see here we've got the brickwork above DPC. There's 2,017 bricks included in that. Also in here you'll start to see that the brickwork shell is then picking up information from the doors and windows. So if we look at the bifold door, for argument's sake, you can see we've got the vertical DPC, the lintel, the dummy frame, and the cavity closer have also been added to the price. Roof structure is fully described. All the fascias, gutter brackets, roof tiles, and so on. They're all in there. LED flashings, you can see it's picked up the LED flashing for us automatically. So the software doesn't forget about anything. If you're doing it late at night and you're tired, you can forget stuff and leave it, and just you're losing money. There's all the cavity trays as well, they've been allowed for. Plastering allows us to plaster everything, ceilings, roofs, reveals, they're all done for you. So as you see, looking at the bottom of the screen here, we've got an 11-page document that's been produced virtually instantaneously. Effectively, it's all been pulled through by us laying out the elements on the CAD drawing. So we've just about run out of time, I'm afraid, but I hope you can see that the software will then go on to generate your health and safety documentation and your contracts, and also links to the project management tool. We will be having more seminars about those in due course, or if you go onto our website, you'll find that there are loads of videos about the various things. I know I've been talking very quickly. Are there any questions at all that you guys have got before we close the demonstration? Okay, let's go back into Plans Express and we'll have another quick look at that while you're having a think, or maybe wanting to type a question out. Okay, it doesn't look as though anybody's got any questions, unless somebody says to me quickly. I'm going to sign off. Actually, before I do that, I've just got to go and run through what offers we got on. So the sort of final message there really is, you don't need to be cheap to win the work. As we travel around the country, we meet lots of builders who tell us this. You don't have to be the cheapest to win the work. You need to win it on quality and presentation. So if there's one thing you can take away from today's session, is do not believe that you have to be the cheapest to win the work. You just have to be good at presenting it, and obviously good at delivering the work as well. So in terms of software deals, it's obviously Christmas at the moment, so we've got some pre-Christmas deals to take advantage of the run-up to Christmas. The Premium Project Toolkit, which as you've seen contains all of those software products, is just £2,299. That's a saving of £992 on our RRP, but if you go for this offer, you also get a free laptop. We've got other offers as well if you speak to our sales team, and you can also upgrade that to the Ultimate Premium Project Toolkit, which has the Ultimate Estimator Express and Ultimate Plans Express. That contains the photorealistic 3D model of the house, which unfortunately we've not had time to look at today, but it gives you that fantastic photoreal floor plans and so on that we looked at. Estimator Express contains an automated plumbing and heating calculator and a whole raft of additional software for doing office refits, basements and so on. Have a look on the website to see more of that detail. So if you want to have a chat with our sales guys, they'd be delighted to have a chat with you. I know we've covered this extremely quickly today, and I'm happy to have some one-to-one conversations with anybody who's been at the seminar today. So give us a call or drop us an email and we'll get back in touch with you. Thanks very much.